just to get us
So now I'm
just
recording.
warmed up. The title, interrupt me anytime, by the way. Thank you, Mary Ann, for inviting me to do this. The, the title I was asked to present on is The Science of Empathy. And I think it's based on some presentations I've done for Crossroads before about neurobiology and presence, ministry of presence, those kinds of things. It's of interest to me that, everybody on this call has some kind of role that you're in where you're providing care. Wayne, you've retired out of active therapy role, but you're teaching this as well. But everybody else, I think, is pretty active still, it sounds like, in providing care to people. So it makes sense that this is a topic that is of interest to you. I will say I am not a scientist. I am a psychotherapist. I live in Asheville, North Carolina. I do a lot of teaching as well and writing. But I come to this topic, I listen to science, I read science. I'm trying to get the gist of how whatever science is teaching us can be useful in the very practical work I do, trying to connect with people and help people. So the title, is maybe a little misleading, calling it the science. And a better title might be The Power of Connection. Um, uh, but what I'm going to be offering here, I hope, is just enough science, maybe the right amount. And speaking of science as from the perspective of someone who's not actually a scientist, but maybe just the right amount of science to help you do what you do with a bit more understanding of what's going on, and also maybe a bit more confidence. There is the field of neurobiology, neuroscience, in the last 30 years has coined a term that if you even just seeing the term will help you understand something of the science here. And the term is interpersonal neurobiology, which sounds kind of intimidating and overwhelming. And what the heck is that? Until you actually look at it. And interpersonal means social, it means relational, it means connection. And neurobiology means our brains, our nervous system, and our bodies. There is a connection between interpersonal relationship and our bodies. And what the science has shown pretty overwhelmingly and consistently over the last several decades is that our relationships change our brains and our bodies. And that is as simple as I know to say everything I'm going to be talking with you about. It's a very holistic understanding of humans, and also a very relational understanding of humans. What happens between us, and what you bring to the people you connect with in your professional roles and in your personal life, it's not just warm and fuzzy. You are literally changing their brains. It may be like just a momentary change, or it may over time develop into lasting change, but the quality of the relationships you have affect people's bodies and their minds. And that's the big theme of this whole presentation. So it's a very holistic understanding. There's another holistic term that I bet you are familiar with. This one, biopsychosocial spiritual. And this last slide, interpersonal neurobiology, I really wanted you to lean on this third term here, the social. What we know about humans, or at least believe with good evidence about human beings, is that we don't have a body section that's separate from a psychological section, that's separate from a spiritual section, that's separate from our relational section. All of this stuff is interrelated, interconnected, interpenetrating. You can't touch one part of us without all these other things being affected. And so, again, that third term, social, the connections we have with one another affect our bodies, our minds, and our spirits. And of course, we could touch any of the other three terms as well and affect the social. as well. But just by being with people in a certain kind of way, which we'll talk about what that certain kind of way is over the next several minutes, we affect people physically and spiritually. Let's just pause for a second and see what the word empathy already what connections or associations you already have to that term. What is it? If you were asked to define empathy, I'm not asking for a polished definition, but what words would be in your definition of empathy? And these could be very prosaic, scientific sounding terms or very poetic, spiritual sounding kinds of terms. But what words would make it into your definition, or if you were writing a paragraph about empathy, what it is and why it's important, what words would be in yours? And you can unmute and say those aloud. You can put them in the chat feature and I'll read them aloud, whatever's preferable to you.
I would say feeling with.
Feeling with. Genuine connection. So genuine connection, feeling with.
I'd say emotional connection and understanding.
Emotional connection and understanding.
Being fully present too.
Fully present. Sensing another's emotions, connecting psychically and spiritually. Great. This is good. This is good. Y'all are fighting the good fight here. And the emotion, the people who research these things and write about it, I mean, just a broad definition they offer is that empathy is this capacity or ability to sense other people's emotions, much as you've said. And it's also includes the ability to imagine what somebody else might be thinking or feeling. What is known as affective or emotional empathy refers to the sensations we get in our bodies. You know, you can feel a literal pain in your chest sometimes, or you can feel trembling in your hands and arms, or you can feel just the bottom drop out of your stomach. You can empathize with someone in such a way that your body is affected by the connection with them. But also emotionally, you might feel sad, you might feel angry, you might feel afraid. But these emotions and sensations in our bodies that we get in response to other people and what they're going through. It might be that we also literally physically mirror or mimic somebody. You know, they put their hand on their heart and we do too. They pull their head back and we just almost, our bodies like react without thinking, without intentionally trying to do it. Our bodies just react in these empathic, fully present with. Somebody said that phrase, kind of way with other people. We can be emotionally empathic with people around distressing emotions, but also around joyful emotions. You know, laughter, you walk into a room, a lot of people are laughing, and all of a sudden you just feel some laughter welling up in you, unless you think they're laughing at you. But you know what I mean? If there's like joy in a room, that tends to be contagious. Yawning is an example of empathy. You know, a few people in a room start yawning and all of a sudden everyone's yawning. There's also what's called cognitive empathy. And this is the ability to take someone else's perspective, you know, to identify and to know, that person, he's upset, or that person is relaxed. I mean, like we can just kind of read people's bodies and the way they're speaking and have like a thought about what it is they're feeling. It's not just that we're our bodies or our emotions are joining them, but we can recognize. And there's a lot of research now. It's not definitive at all. There's a lot of debate about this, but that people with autism spectrum disorders have difficulty with this part, with the cognitive empathy, with like naming or thinking to themselves what that is that this other person might be feeling. There's what's called, click. There we go. Emotion recognition. And this is related to cognitive empathy, but then there's also emotional resonance, and that's more connected to what's called affective empathy. This is when you feel what the other person feels, and we can only bear so much of this, actually. If you, I mean, no one said that you are, but like a person who works in the emergency room and is around distress all day, every day, they've got to turn down their whatever capacity they have for emotional resonance and for feeling, literally feeling what other people feel. They've got to turn that down. And I have clients in my practice who have really, really high levels of emotional resonance, and they experience, they are often more anxious, more depressed, more stress, more like life is just harder for people with high levels of emotional resonance, and they feel bad. They think something's wrong with them. And what it really means is they've just got to learn to manage this gift, this empathic gift that they have. I am not a person, you know, who's high on that scale of emotional resonance. I feel like I'm sort of moderate. I can feel a lot of what other people are feeling, but it's not so much that it becomes overwhelming for me. But for some people, it really is. I heard the Dalai Lama interviewed once, and he said, they were asking him about empathy, and he said, I feel what other people feel for about 2 seconds, and then it goes away. And he said, I'm kind of glad I'm like that, because if it were with me all the time, I could never do anything but just be kind of absorbed in the emotional intensity of the people and the suffering of those around me. Let me ask you, why does empathy matter? I'd like to hear what your thoughts are about that. Why do you think it's important? This ability to resonate and recognize what other people are feeling. Thoughts about that?
I think being able to know how people are feeling is a big part of helping people feel understood. Feelings are more important than I think we give credit to in our Western society. If we don't understand how someone else is feeling, they often feel misunderstood, even if we have the facts right.
Yeah, right. We can know the facts of someone's situation, but if there's not that sense of knowing what their felt experience is, they might feel alone. I mean, it just makes a difference. Others, like, how would you put that? Why is it important, this capacity?
I feel like the pandemic taught us that people want to be seen, that we had taken that for granted for a period of time. To have people to be able to walk alongside them, not necessarily to know the same thing that they're doing, but to at least see them and what they're in, and where empathy can come into that play.
Right. It really meets a need, a deep need other people have. Yeah, yeah. Go to the chat. Wayne says, being vulnerable to be changed by what the other is experiencing. It's important in that way too. Like, we ourselves are open to the impact another might have on us. Empathy is important in that way. And Robin, it lets the other know that you heard them. Absolutely. Do you have to use words to convey your empathy? I'm seeing head people. All right, so rhetorical question. People are answering it, right? You know, when you are in, I guarantee you, everybody on this call, when you are in the presence of someone who gets you, you know they get you. I mean, and they may say some things that add to that, but for many or most, if at least many people, maybe everybody, I don't know, it's probably not everybody, but like you can feel it when someone is present with you and when they are taking you in. And if you'll also think about the people in your life or moments in your life when you have felt that, you will know the difference it makes. You will know why it matters.
Russell, you may be going here in a little bit, but I was thinking about the importance of recognizing that empathy is happening. I've known way too many people who see their ability to be empathic as a weakness, as a failing, because their whole view of the world is they're supposed to be able to dominate the world around them.
Wow.
So when we recognize that there is this ongoing relationship, emotional relationship, empathic relationship that's going on all the time, whether we recognize it or not, then we can work with that.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're fighting against our natural instincts, and that never turns out well.
Yeah, I am going to say that to some extent, but not quite in the way you did, and I appreciate the way you said it. But empathy is a natural state, and it's present unless there's something that impinges upon that capacity. And I'll be talking about the impingements in just a minute. And what I appreciate about your comment is everybody on this call understands it does work in which the power of empathy is crucial. Like, so you value it, but what you're naming is there are people in the world for whom like empathy gets in the way of what they think they're supposed to be about. Like, I'm supposed to be dominating, controlling, managing, staying on task, not slowing down, type A in my way through life. And empathy, that gets in the way, right? Yeah. And I can, and there are people who do feel, as you said, as you've articulated, like it's actually a weakness. It's not a strength. It's not an asset. Yeah. So this is the choir here, right? But I appreciate your naming that. Let's see what's next. I would say, you know, also just add, for me, empathy is a form of nourishment. Those connections, those authentic, genuine connections with people are very sustaining for me. It juices me. It makes me feel alive and good. So, again, empathy is about connection. You've seen that picture earlier with the word connection on it, and I'm really emphasizing the connection. And in this next slide, I'm just emphasizing that it's a head thing and a heart thing. And I mean that both metaphorically, but also, as you're going to see in a slide in a minute, literally. Empathy depends on this connection, a neural connection between our brains and the region of our heart. I'm going to talk about these 5 things unless everybody already knows about it. So when we get into the science and understanding how this works a bit, I'm going to talk about the nervous system, about mirror neurons, about a part of our brain called the amygdala, about a conceptual concept called the window of tolerance, and about the vagus nerve. And let me just ask, are there any of those that anybody says, please talk about that, because I don't know a lot about that, because I can go fast over some things and slow down around some things. Is there vagus nerve? Got it. Anything else? All right. Well, that's what we'll do. And those of you who are watching the recording, you should have been here, and then you would have got a vote. But all right. But let me just buzz through quickly. Just a high-level overview of what our nervous system is and what its job is. The nervous system includes our brain, our spinal column, and 100 billion nerves that run throughout our body. and that connect with every organ in our body. The brain and the spinal column make up what's called the central nervous system. And then all those nerves, which are kind of pictured in the slide, that's what's called the peripheral nervous system. The job of our entire nervous system is to regulate energy throughout our bodies. Our bodies and different parts of our bodies need different levels of energy at different times. Different parts of your brain, for instance, need sugar and oxygen at higher levels, depending on what's happening. The muscles of your legs and arms need more glucose or oxygen, depending on what's happening. And sometimes they need more, sometimes they need less. The nervous system job is to know what's going on around us and to provide energy in the right amounts to the right places in our bodies at all times. And when it comes to the well-being of the rest of our body, as the nervous system goes, so goes everything else. The digestive system, the heart, the lungs, the skin, the sex organs, the renal system, everything. The condition of our nervous system affects the health and functioning of everything else. And when it comes to empathy and connection and presence with others, our nervous system it drives the train. Our nervous system has to be in a certain state for us to be able to be empathic, and and this includes the vagus nerve, Robin, and others who are interested in that. So this peripheral nervous system, so we've got the central, which is our brain and our spinal column, peripheral, all these nerves. It's divided into two sections. It includes the autonomic nervous system, which this is what connects the brain and the spinal column to all these other parts of our bodies. And the autonomic nervous system handles all these automatic body functions like your heartbeat, your breathing, your digestion, sweat. Those things you don't have to think to do, that they just happen automatically, autonomically. That's regulated by the autonomic nervous system, the energy there. And there are two branches of the autonomic nervous system that I'll talk about shortly, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, and that's connected to the vagal nerve stuff too. Now, you see this picture, that's a picture of one person, and physically speaking, our brain, spinal column, and all those nerves, those are yours. But they all exist within the boundaries that your skin provides. But the condition of your nervous system, what it's doing and how it's doing from moment to moment, is not just about you. It's also about what's around you and who's around you. Someone starts doing something irregular. Somebody in your presence does something startling or bizarre, and your nervous system is going to become unsettled and aroused. Or somebody speaks to us in a soothing voice and invites us into a moment of gratitude, and our nervous system will get calm. And so what we've learned to say the past several decades is that the nervous system is a social organ. It looks like it belongs to me, but it really belongs to we. Our nervous system is not self-contained. It is always interacting. Yours is shaping mine, mine is shaping yours. That is actually happening right now in this minute. I've got a lot of material to cover. I'm talking a little faster than I normally talk. That's probably affecting your nervous system. You're probably just a little more on edge than you would be if I were talking in my normal kind of slow and mellow voice. But the energy of our nervous systems is contagious. And we don't have to be conscious of this happening for it to be true. When you are a baby and you're upset and crying, and someone picks you up and they gently kind of squeeze you or swaddle you, they sing to you, or they speak to you in a soothing voice, you're a baby. You're 1 week old. You're not conscious that someone is doing all that to you. You can't articulate that in your brain that that's what's happening, but your nervous system responds to their nervous system. and it adapts. It becomes soothing. And when you're an adult, not a baby anymore, and you're upset, and you end up in the presence of someone who cares about you, and they're calm and they're grounded and they're open-hearted with you, it's not just your conscious mind that says like, oh, I'm with Marianne and she cares about me. It's not just your conscious thought that helps you. It's your nervous system that's taking in this information, the presence of this other person unconsciously, and responding to their nervous system. So our nervous system, it's a social organ, and this has massive implications for caregiving. If I could pause right now for 5 minutes and just let that thought soak in with you, I would. I'm going to keep going, but somehow or another, let this sentence settle into you in a deep, deep way. Your nervous system and other people's nervous systems are connected. They share energy and exchange energy. One of the reasons this is true, and this is a little bit more of the science too, that one of the reasons that the nervous system is a social organ is because in our brains, in our skulls, this part of our central nervous system, there are neurons, brain cells called mirror neurons. And these are a particular kind of neuron or brain cell that discharge or fire when I am doing something physically. This part of my brain fires, or when I watch somebody else doing that same action. And the way they were discovered is kind of an interesting story. They were doing research on these monkeys, and they had their electrodes in their skulls, and like all these electrodes, and they would give the monkey a peanut, and then so when the monkey takes its hands and opens this peanut and eats this peanut, what parts of the brain fire? And so they've recorded all this. So are you anticipating subjugating the parasympathetic nervous system? Linda, can I come to that question soon? Yeah, I'm not even finishing the question. I haven't even read it, the whole thing yet, but we'll see if this comes. Anyway, when the monkey grabbed the peanut and ate the peanut, these parts of its brain fired. One night, a lab assistant said, I'm kind of hungry too. So the lab assistant grabbed a peanut, started shelling the peanut, eating the peanut. The same parts of the brain in the monkey started firing when it watched the lab assistant shell the peanut and eat the peanut, as when the monkey itself was shelling and eating the peanut. And so they said, whoa, there are these neural cells that fire, that are active when it observes what's someone else is doing, not just when I'm doing it myself. And there's been then, this was like in the 1980s when this happened. So there's been now 30 or 40 years of ongoing research and some debate. It's not an uncontroversial topic about what these cells actually are. But in the gist of it is, like, we are naturally equipped with physical structure that helps us at least understand and feel in ourselves what someone around us is doing. This is a bit of the basis of empathy. Let's see. This goes back to Wayne's point earlier. Empathy is natural when our nervous system is in a certain state. I mentioned earlier the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. Empathy is natural when the parasympathetic part of our nervous system is engaged and the sympathetic is dialed back. I think it sounds like, who's not familiar with the window of tolerance? I'm just curious how much time I need to spend here. All right, good, let's do it. This is super helpful. So I said earlier that the job of the nervous system is to regulate energy throughout our body. And this black line running across these three different color sections represents, just imagine that that's a metaphor or a symbol for different amounts of energy. When our energy is in this light green state, well, this light green state is what we're going to call the window of tolerance. And it means that our energy at this moment right here, where my cursor is intersecting that black line, our energy is at such a level that we can tolerate it. It's just right, Goldilocks, right? When the energy of our nervous system is in this light green state, we can tolerate and remain connected with ourselves, with our thoughts and our feelings, and with others. So when I'm going to say, I haven't told you everything I need to tell you about it yet, but just for now, just know that empathy is natural when our nervous system is at this level of energetic arousal. We can connect with ourselves and others. When you are doing your work well, really attending to people, listening and responding from a place of wisdom and care, you are probably what we call inside the window of tolerance. And we say that it's within the window of tolerance that we can tend and befriend. So that's empathy, rest and digest. I'll show you a slide about that in a minute. Feed and breed. So eating and also sexual connection happens within this window of tolerance. But you'll see there's a color below and above. Above it, the top section, when our nervous system decides we need more energy, like something exciting is happening, like we're playing basketball, or something threatening or dangerous is happening, our nervous system gives us more energy to mobilize us for action. And this is what we call the fight-flight system. And this is also, I can't remember if it's on this slide or not. I think it might be. This orange is what we call the sympathetic nervous system. It has now kicked in. The light green is what we call the parasympathetic nervous system. Again, we can connect, we can empathize. Our natural capacities for empathy are available to us. But whenever we need to mobilize for action, our capacity for empathy might go down. Like your capacity to empathize with someone is not as strong if you think they're dangerous to you. That's just biology. When the fight-flight system and the sympathetic nervous system are aroused, our heart rate goes up, our blood pressure goes up. Remember, the nervous system controls all these other systems in the body. Blood leaves the digestive system and goes to the large muscles of the arms and legs, arms to fight, legs to flee. Blood leaves the neocortex, the thinking brain, and it goes to the hindbrain, to the cerebellum and those parts of the brain that control these large motor functions. And then the bottom green, when our nervous system decides that action is not a good idea, it won't help to run or fight. It's of no use. Or maybe we just need to rest. Our nervous system withdraws energy from our bodies so that we can immobilize. And the actions here can also include dissociation, feeling numb, or being collapsed. So our energy goes up and down continually depending on what we perceive as needed. Are we safe or are we in danger? I'll show you a picture soon of the amygdala. There's a little almond-sized part of the brain, right in the middle of the brain, called the amygdala, and its only job is to answer the question every split second of your life, am I safe or am I not safe? And depending on how it answers that question, the energy of your nervous system will organize around that whole safety or not safety question. So to be in this lime green zone, which is what we call the window of tolerance, when we're in that window, we call this being emotionally regulated. When we are above it, we call that being emotionally dysregulated at the hyperaroused, or below it, dysregulated in what's called hypoarousal. I'm gonna just add, so look at these two colors here, orange and green, because you're gonna see them on the next slide, but it's gonna be disorganized. It's gonna be pictured a different way. The
Russell,
green,
before you go on,
yeah,
I just wanna note that the top and the bottom slices are both forms of reactivity.
they're both forms of reactivity. That's correct. They both happen when we don't feel safe, or I mean, there's some mixed states actually. So,
Yeah, what I'm saying is that the thinking part of the brain shuts down in either case,
correct.
whether it's at the high or the low.
That is correct. Right. So like you can be in a mixed state, like sort of in that border between the light green and the orange when you are playing music, maybe, or I said earlier, playing basketball. When, you know, sex is kind of a mixed state. You're not, there's a sense of safety, but there is some degree of arousal. Or you can be at the border here between, you know, this window of tolerance and this lower state when you're meditating or praying or doing something, some kind of deep, peaceful activity. But the thinking brain tends to shut down. And maybe not entirely, but it's just we don't need it. You know, our nervous system decides the oxygen is better and sugar are better used in these other parts of the body than in the thinking parts of our brain. So again, the green, that window of tolerance, is what's called the parasympathetic nervous system. And when that part of our nervous system is ascendant, these kinds of things happen in our bodies. And when the sympathetic, that above the window of tolerance, that fight flight needs are determined to be necessary, these are the things that happen in our bodies. So yeah, I think I'm not going to say these next things just because to keep it moving. Yeah, so there's your fight flight, and there's your tend and befriend.
Russell,
Yes.
there are a couple questions in the chat. Do you want them now?
Yeah, let's go for it. We might not get to everything, but that's fine.
Robin asked earlier, if the nervous system is injured in some way, will that affect the ability of someone to empathize?
Yes. I mean, and it depends on what part of the nervous system is injured. You know, I mean, I think, and the main thing I would say here, Robin, would be like injuries to the brain, you know, can definitely affect that. An injury to your, I don't know, if you have a spot, if you lose feeling in the lower part of your body, your heart is still there, right? And that's the main thing. But if a brain injury would affect it for sure.
Connie asked, would the window of tolerance be increased in the case of early childhood trauma at the hands of a primary caregiver?
Absolutely. And that's interpersonal neurobiology. So what happens relationally? So traumatic experiences, attachment traumas affect the condition of the nervous system. And if you're familiar with the ACE studies, the adverse childhood experiences, you know, the reason health outcomes for people with high ACE scores are poorer is not because, you know, watching violence in your home affects your heart, or let's say your digestive system or your renal system directly. It's because it dysregulates your nervous system, and your nervous system kind of gets stuck in this state of hyperarousal, that orange zone. And when, you know, when you're up there, I haven't gone into all this stuff, but like stress hormones like adrenaline, cortisol, norepinephrine are just pumped into the system continually, and those things stress these other systems. And the nervous system is the connection between the ACE experience, the adverse childhood experiences, and these health outcomes, or it's one of the connections between it. And I think now would be a good time for me to, I think I'm reading fully Linda's, and Linda, are you just asking, am I saying that the parasympathetic system is a branch of the nervous system? Is that the gist of your question, or do you want to amplify that?
So yeah, that was actually my my question. Sorry. I've always been taught the parasympathetic system as separate from the part of the automatic nervous system, ANS, rather than like the nerves and stuff. So it was just a clarifying question, but you addressed that in your slide.
Good. Well, I hope I'm not leading you astray. I'm telling you the best I know, but if there probably people I know, there are definitely people in the world who know more, and if they say different, listen to them and not me. That's I would say, but that's how I've read the science. Yeah. I've given presentations like this before, and sometimes I'll ask, are there any neuroscientists in the room? And I'm always, assured when there aren't. But once there was, and so that was quite a moment. But I talked with her afterwards and said, all right, take me to school. And she said, no, everything was good. So I think I'm telling you right, at least so. Let's see. I really just wanted you to see this, after seeing this slide with the green and the orange, I wanted you to see it like this again. So this is all the things our body's doing when it's above the window of tolerance. And here's when we're regulated and empathy is naturally available to us. And I'm just going to add some terms here. I'm adding to this picture the term parasympathetic and another term ventral vagal. And Robin, here with maybe 8 minutes left, I'm getting to your question. The parasympathetic nervous system also has two branches. So we got the sympathetic up here. The parasympathetic has what's called a ventral vagal branch and the dorsal vagal branch. I'm going to scramble your brains again. I've got the dorsal vagal. So let me just say, the vagus nerve runs from the back of our skull to different parts of our bodies. We're not dealing with green, orange, and blue, green, light green, dark green, and orange anymore. We're dealing with blue, yellow, and red. And here, the blue is the parasympathetic. This is in the window of tolerance. And so it runs from the back of our skull to the muscles of our face and into our chest, into a region of our heart. So the ventral vagal window of tolerance, empathy is natural and possible when our nervous system is in this state. It connects our heart, our mind, and our face. And everybody on this call who does caregiving work knows that for you to make a connection with someone, your heart and your face, and let me put it back up here, also runs through your throat, your voice are very, very central to it. The sympathetic, this is these nerves go to all these organs, particularly to the arms and legs, but it shuts down internal organs and such. And then what's called the dorsal vagal. So there's a ventral the vagal nerve has two branches, the ventral and the dorsal. They're both part of the parasympathetic nervous system, but whenever we need to shut down, whenever, let's just say, for example, when fighting back would get you killed, the dorsal branch of the vagal system takes over. and it shuts you down and immobilizes you. This is Stephen Porges, a psychologist, neuroscientist, who developed what's called the polyvagal. So vagal means like vagrant, vagabond, it's wandering. These nerves wander through the body, the vagal nerve. And so he says there's more than one vagal nerve. There are two branches of the vagal nerve, this dorsal that goes to the organs of the viscera, and the ventral, which goes to the heart, face, and voice. So again, I don't have time to give this much explanation, but I think the take-home message is the scientists now understand biologically what is happening for us physically and in our nervous systems when we are in a state of mind and body that we can connect with others and empathize with them. And what bumps us out of being able to be empathic is anything that we experience as danger, basically. So when we feel safe, either really safe or even perceived safe, this natural capacity for empathy is present for us. I said again, I mentioned the amygdala. I will just point out this. So notice how far it is from the amygdala to this, the hindbrain, which is where all this reflex automatic stuff happens. How far from there to there, and how far from here to the front of the brain, which is where thinking and reasoning happens. And they've measured it, and I think I'm getting this right. The time it takes for the electrical signal to go from the amygdala, which is what tells you safe or not safe, to here is 1/10 of a second. And from here to here is 5/10 of a second. So the reason that you might react emotionally and impulsively, and your mouth might start saying something you wish you hadn't said, is because this more kind of reflexive part of your brain, it gets the signal of danger faster than this one does. And so it just has this head start. So it's not easy being a good person, is it? I briefly just want to say that our bodies go through a natural progression. I'm not going to do this slide, actually. I don't have time to do it justice. Other than to say that our first impulse is to, when we experience danger, is to try to connect and neutralize the threat in that way. Our second impulse is to fight or flee. There's what's called an active freeze. And then if none of that works, then we go into what's called a collapsed freeze. And just imagine if you grew up in an environment where you had to take one of those above the window of tolerance or below the window of tolerance stances regularly. Like maybe in your life, if you didn't become passive and submit and just go along, and if you didn't live in this state, your parents made it hell for you. You kind of learn to do this automatically. You kind of go here naturally as sort of it's the state where you live in mostly. Or imagine you grew up in a situation where you had to fight your way down the block every day. Your nervous system kind of adapts to being on edge as sort of its natural state instead of being in this regulated state. So again, the environment, interpersonal neurobiology, the social really affects the physical and the state of our nervous system, which then affects our capacities for empathy. I'm not going to go through this again. But I do want to say that I talk with people a lot about these 4 big resources for getting back in the window of tolerance, like to access your capacity for empathy. What are things you can do whenever you know, whenever you're in the orange or the dark green and you'd like to be in the light green because it feels better and it's more healthy for you and you are a greater resource for others, here are 4 big things. One is connection, like seeking out someone else. We need other people sometimes to help us regulate emotionally. This is what's called co-regulation. Another is breath, working with our breath. If we extend our exhales, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system. That's just a fact. Science has proven it. Like if you will slow your exhale down, make it longer, it will have a positive impact on your emotional regulation and your capacity for empathy. And if you need more energy, then you increase the length of your inhale and shorten your exhale. So it goes the other way too. Movement. If our nervous system is giving energy to our sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight flight, which is arms, legs, simply using your arms and legs, like walking, running, moving your arms, like letting the energy that your nervous system has sent to your arms and legs complete its mission. You know, just stand up in your office and shake your arms. It can help get you back in the window of tolerance. And then touch. And this, like, it's 12 o'clock, but can I take 2 more minutes, Marianne?
Fine with me, if people need to go, they can go.
That's it. If you need to go, go. But I'm going to tell you that when the fetus is developing, it develops by splitting. We begin our life as a single cell organism. That one cell splits and becomes 2. Those 2 split to become 4. 4 split to become 8. 8, 16. And one of the early splits, it's either 4 to 8 or 8 to 16. I can't remember. One of those cells that splits becomes our spinal column. So that's like the superhighway of the nervous system, right? The other cell that splits, like the sister of your spinal column, is your skin. The other cell splits to become your skin. So there is this like lineage connection. The mother of your spinal column nervous system and your skin is the same mother. And that's why when you're in the presence of someone kind of creepy, your skin will crawl. It's literally true. Or when someone you love and trust touches you, it is soothing to your nervous system. And that picture I showed you of the man touching his own face, you can do it for yourself. So like when you're dysregulated and you're thinking, I couldn't empathize with the next person I meet you know, if you pay me $1 million, like touching your face or rubbing your own arms, slowing your exhale down, it can help bring you back. So anyway, that's all we have time for. And thanks for your attention. I wish I had a little less material and a little more time to talk with you, but hopefully some of this is useful, and would love to hear from you if you want to follow up.
Russell, thank you so much for the time you gave us. And maybe it's just giving us ideas about asking you back for some more specific information about certain topics.
Yeah, or to talk more about this. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's
Okay.
fascinating, and it's a lot of research that's come out in the last few decades, which I think really affirms things that maybe we knew as caregivers intuitively, but now we see the science behind it, and it's fascinating.
That is a super, super great concluding statement. Like the things that you have known intuitively your whole life, the science is now backing it up. Yeah.
Which is totally cool.
Yeah, it is.
So thanks for your presentation, everyone. Thanks for being here. Our next Lunch and Learn is in July, on the 3rd Thursday. And I hope you'll join us.
Bye, everybody.
Farewell.